there was an apocalyptic event that shook humanity, occurring approximately 74,000 years ago in what is now Indonesia. It was a monumental eruption from a superpowered volcano at Mount Toba, which stood out as the largest eruption on Earth in the past 2 million years. Not even the tragic destruction of Pompeii, when Mount Vesuvius swallowed the entire city, can be compared in magnitude to this event at Mount Toba. At that time, humanity was dangerously close to extinction, and the real problem lay not in the volcano itself, but in the devastating consequences that followed. Studies suggest that between 3,000 and 10,000 people managed to survive the post-eruption period. During the disaster, millions of tons of volcanic ash and soot were released, forming a cloud that spread across the skies, blocking sunlight in India, Indonesia, and over the Indian Ocean. Some scientists claim that the world plunged into a volcanic winter that persisted for several decades. Imagine, for a moment, looking out the window on a cloudy day. You can see how the clouds cover everything but still allow sunlight to filter through. However, during that cataclysmic event, the situation was much worse. The sulfur dioxide present in the volcanic ash intensely reflected sunlight, while the particles and dust took a considerable amount of time to settle. They may have traveled to the four corners of the planet, sowing destruction wherever they went, severely affecting countless forms of life. Many plants could not survive due to the lack of sunlight, and the Earth's temperature dropped several degrees, triggering a series of disasters. Although in modern times, such events do not impact city dwellers as much, for nature, even small changes can have catastrophic consequences. For example, plants and insects can adapt to the same temperature over thousands of years, but an intense cold wave annihilates them. This results in a shortage of food to feed their offspring, and the population of all wild creatures begins to decline. The ancient peoples of that time survived by hunting herbivores and gathering berries, fruits, and mushrooms. However, the eruption destroyed almost everything and caused a deficiency of vitamin D due to the lack of light. As a result, people began to suffer from deep depression. Nevertheless, some scientists believe that many survived this period with relative ease, especially those who inhabited the coast of South Africa. The ocean escaped the worst damage from this disaster, and the tribes living near the waters harvested an abundance of fish. Both versions still lack confirmation as experts strive to construct an accurate picture of human development after this volcanic apocalypse. About 50,000 years have passed since the eruption at Toba, when the sun finally broke through the clouds and the ashes settled on the ground. Nature and people began to restore the balance that existed before, but the warm times did not return quickly. The Ice Age had already begun, and this problem was much more severe, lasting for thousands of years. Decreased solar activity and changes in the planet's orbit resulted in sharp temperature drops. Endless cold enveloped virtually the entire globe, forcing all forms of life to migrate and struggle for survival. Animals as powerful as mammoths and saber-toothed tigers succumbed to the Ice Age, but Homo sapiens managed to adapt to the new climatic conditions. People sought shelter in caves, made fires, and honed their hunting skills. In that sense, this period made humanity more resilient and strong. In modern times, such extreme weather conditions can create significant problems for the global economy, triggering financial crises worldwide. The last period similar to the Ice Age occurred in the early 19th century when Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted, spewing millions of tons of pumice, soot, and volcanic ash into the skies. People living on a volcanic island suffered severe damage within the first minutes. However, the consequences of the eruption soon reached the entire world. Volcanic ash once again blocked sunlight, resulting in one of the coldest years in North America and Eurasia. The year 1816 is best known in history as the year without a summer. The ash cloud increased humidity and lowered temperatures in many regions. During the summer of 1816, in Central and Western Europe, as well as in North America, a damp and cold climate devastated crops. Product prices rose, and the poorest lost access to food. Logistics and transportation also suffered significant impacts. At that time, people used horses as a means of transportation, but due to the high price of oats, many couldn't afford to keep them. It is believed that these circumstances inspired the creation of the world's first bicycle invention. Additionally, there is a theory that the eruption of Tambora helped bring the famous Frankenstein to life. Several writers, including Mary Shelley, gathered in a village in Switzerland, where they began writing fantastical stories. The gloomy atmosphere and rain pounding on the windows inspired Mary Shelley to create the story of Dr. Frankenstein and his creature. Currently, Mount Tambora is still active, but there is no concern about its awakening. If that were to happen, we would be prepared. We would likely face fewer consequences as we have advanced technologies, large greenhouses, and incubators for growing vegetables and fruits. Of course, the volcanic winter could cause a year-long crisis, but we have the capacity to easily survive. Music. In the 1930s, another disaster occurred, but this time it was caused not only by nature but also by human action. During that time, many countries heavily relied on agriculture, and vast areas were dedicated to it. People engaged in excessive farming, quickly depleting the soil of its essential nutrients for wheat and corn growth. This resulted in the transformation of the top layer of soil into dust. Winds blew from the west to the east, reaching states like Colorado, Nebraska, Texas, and Oklahoma in the United States, raising dense clouds of dust. This period, known as the Dust Bowl, lasted for 8 years and represented one of the greatest challenges of the Great Depression. Many people were forced to leave their homes and move to other states. Dust storms became so intense that they blocked out the sunlight. In Washington, entire cities were covered in a rain of sand, causing respiratory problems. Even ship captains sailing in the Atlantic Ocean reported the pollution caused by these storms. Powerful earthquakes, supervolcano eruptions, floods, fires, and hurricanes have swept entire species of animals from the planet. However, humans have always found a way to survive. In the face of the most extreme challenges, humanity's resilience and creativity prevail, allowing us to overcome adversity and find new ways to thrive. In the most challenging conditions, we don't need to worry about the next global catastrophe. We will face it. I hope so. But what if it's something as impactful as the fall of a massive meteorite or a poisoned atmosphere? In that case, it would be better to find a remote island or even fly to the moon. The important thing is to have the opportunity to start anew. After all, sooner or later, the apocalypse comes to an end, and the earth renews itself like new. An alternative would be to seek refuge in an underground bunker with large stocks of food and oxygen. With a current global population of around 8 billion people, it would be possible to thrive again and restore the population with just a few hundred to 5,000 individuals. World history has already recorded cases where small tribes, with only a few hundred members, have survived for centuries and even millennia. However, to achieve this goal, it would be necessary to leave behind the megacities, which heavily rely on agricultural fields and harvests. During a global catastrophe, no one would provide food for the cities, and hunger would lead to complete chaos. To be safe, one would need to flee and return to the practices of the early inhabitants of the Neolithic period, around 12,000 years ago, shortly after the end of the last ice age. At that time, people lived in separate small villages, with populations ranging from a few hundred to 1,000 individuals, forming large families. In fact, it's not such a bad option. After the apocalypse, cultivating vegetables on a small farm, enjoying healthy food, and embracing nature can be a pleasant path to start anew. Finding balance with the land and living in harmony with the available resources becomes the key to survival and the reconstruction of a new world.